Welcome to Offset. Larry and the Big Man, Jay Caufield, two-time Stanley Cup champion. Want to thank One Team Media's Brian Hess and Ryan Jorgen for producing, and from Odyssey Pittsburgh, Michael Spacciapoli.
And also Dave Rourke and the Rourke Automotive Group, and Tom Grealish with Henderson Brothers. Thank you guys for being title sponsors with our podcast. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Special hockey edition. We welcome back the great Pierre McGuire, who just returned from Ireland. Pierre, good to see you.
Larry, Jay, great to visit with you guys. Yeah, what a vacation, so to speak. It was actually a working vacation in Northern Ireland. It's been my second time in the last 4 weeks over in Northern Ireland. The last time I was giving a speech at the IIHF conference for 100 professional hockey teams in Europe, and this time it was to watch Miami, Union College, Sacred Heart, and RIT playing the only college hockey tournament outside of the United States. Miami eventually won the tournament, but it was a tremendous event. It's the second time I've been there, and I'm actually going back for the women's event at the end of December for a full week to watch the women play over there, so I'm pretty excited about that too.
How's the attendance when you go there?
Yeah, what's the interest level in Ireland? Obviously, there's enough to create these tournaments.
Well, the Belfast Giants have been there for 25 years. That's a professional hockey team in the EIHL. The Elite Ice Hockey League, which is all of Scotland, all of England, and only one team in Ireland. So the Belfast Giants sponsor this. Their building is spectacular. It's called the SSE Arena. It's right near the Titanic Museum. They get about 9,000 people a game for their league games. And, last year when I was there, when BU was there and all the top teams were there, they were getting close to 10,000 with standing room only. I'm not kidding. This event this year was probably closer to 8,000. Just because you didn't have the same size schools that were there, but it was spectacular. So hockey's alive and thriving in Northern Ireland, I can tell you that.
That's great to see that.
Yeah, Pierre, I went with when the Steelers played against the Vikings for the first ever NFL regular season game in Ireland, and obviously with the Rooney family and the connection, there was a lot of synergy, and people were fired up. But there's a great connection with Ireland, obviously, and southwestern Pennsylvania, too, over the decades because of the immigration wave, and there's still a heavy Irish-American population here. But I didn't know they liked hockey so much.
They're actually going to get an expansion team in Dublin. They're trying to build a big arena in Dublin right now. If that happens, it'll be like the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. It'll be like the Quebec Nordiques and the Montreal Canadiens. It'll be like the Rangers and the Islanders. You know what I mean? It'll be one of those nasty wars where guys are fighting it out tooth and nail. So I'm looking forward for that to happen. It's pretty close to happening right now, which would be huge for the sport in Ireland and gigantic for the sport in all of Europe.
Yeah, and Pierre, what I'm hearing too is that, staying on this international type of thing, that the NHL, one of the reasons why they want to go to 84 games is they want to have many teams go overseas and play, just like what we saw the Penguins do in Sweden.
Great point, Jay, and it's absolutely true. The NHL just opened up an office in Switzerland, the first time they've ever done that. They're definitely exploring that. I've talked to a bunch of different European owners. George McPhee, as I said, the president of hockey operations in Vegas, he and I were over in Ireland about a month and a half ago, talking to all these pro teams, and they definitely are not intimidated by having NHL teams come over and play real NHL games. So you're spot on. You go from 82 to 84 games. I coached in a league where we did go from 82 to 84 games, and they called them neutral site games. So one time you could play in Richfield, Ohio. The other time you could play in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Another time you may be playing in Toledo, Ohio. It depended. But I think the league is probably smart to try to grow their footprint in Europe, where there's a massive amount of people that are fans of the National Hockey League.
That's awesome that way. So let's go. Let's go right to the Penguins here, Pierre, and then we'll get around the league a little bit. But last night, a big win in Philly, and really, Philly had no answer for what the Penguins were putting at them. I felt the Penguins dominated that from beginning to end, physically too. There was no Delorier in the lineup, so that's one thing on the physical side. But I didn't see any pushback. I didn't see the star players. I like Trevor Zegras. I didn't even notice him throughout the night as far as a guy that's going to pick up the Flyers, where the Penguins, time after time, opportunity, the big guys just kind of come to play. It was a great game for them last night.
Well said. Agreed. So here's the biggest thing is I think they were embarrassed, obviously, on Saturday night when they got throttled by Toronto. I watched that game. I had just come back from Europe, and I couldn't believe how poor the Pittsburgh Penguins played in their own zone. I'm sure they had a heck of a film session on Sunday afternoon or maybe Sunday during the day. Was not good, but I can tell you they responded really well, I thought, last night. I love the way Sid started the game. I loved Erik Karlsson, the assist that Karlsson gets when he moves a puck to Rust on the power play, when he carries a puck. That's vintage Erik Karlsson. I've been watching him do that since he's been 15 years old. When he's on his game, that's his thing, and I was so happy to see that. And obviously Brian Rust had a tremendous game with a goal and 2 assists. But to me, it all starts with Sid. I mean, Sid makes it happen right out of the gate. And the fans in Philly choose to detest him, which is unfortunate. But the truth of the matter is I think that actually helps Sidney go to another level. It's fun to watch.
Wouldn't you think they'd learn after 20 years that it doesn't? It drop the best. I don't know. I always find it kind of amusing that they continue to do it, and all he does is puts points on the board. I was going to say, and before Larry has a question for you too, but I was just want to make the point about Pierre. Tell us about, and you know this from the what it's like coaching, but you look at last night. I looked at the power play units, and that's Mike Stothers handles the penalty kill side is Mike Stothers. Todd Nelson is the power play side. And whatever film and how they prepared the Penguins last night, and certainly skill on the power play side takes over, but they were well prepared for whatever Philly offered on the power play, and certainly their penalty kill. There was no issues whatsoever. So you got to tip your cap to the coaching staff for what they provided and how they readied the team, if you will. And you tell us a little bit. You know what that's like, what it's like in the room with the units alike on each power play and or penalty kill.
Yeah, well, each team has different tactics and tendencies, as you well know, Jay. And I think with Philadelphia, it's about applying pressure points at key times. There's certain players you want to take out of the power play. So whether it's Trevor Zegras or Tyson Forster, there's certain guys that you want to take right out of rhythm. And so I thought that the pressure points that were established by Pittsburgh on their penalty kill last night were excellent. I love the fact they were trying to push the pace to get easy entries into the zone last night, because once Pittsburgh gets into the zone, they're really tough with all the skill that they have. And the decision makers, whether it's Karlsson, whether it's Crosby, whether it's Russ, whether it's Malkin, they've got elite, even Kindle now, they've got elite decision makers with the puck. So there was a lot that went on in terms of coaching last night. Your points are spot on. And I think the biggest thing on the penalty kill, again, is identifying the players that really are important for Philadelphia and applying pressure points at the right time and making the game uncomfortable for them. And that's what I thought Pittsburgh did really well last night in Philadelphia.
And you mentioned Erik Karlsson. I know last year fans expected more from him, and all of a sudden he's been able to turn it up, and it shows this season. It's made an incredible difference, I think.
Well, you're right on, Larry. For whatever reason, there was a malfunction at the junction last year between Erik Karlsson and the coaching staff. There's no question in my mind. He just didn't feel appreciated. He didn't feel like they were utilizing the proper way. Maybe he didn't handle that as well as he should have. And I've known Erik a long time. I respect him a lot as an athlete and as a human. And for whatever reason, it just didn't work out with the last staff. It's a lot better this year, and you can see he's fun to be around. You see him smiling on the ice. I'm watching him interact with his teammates from afar, and it's a ton of fun to see him back in the game being joyful for him, and it makes a difference for this team. And by the way, you got to say this about Erik Karlsson, which I think is really important. The unseen part of him is playing with Parker Wotherspoon. I think Wotherspoon, look at the stretch pass he made last night in the third period to Kevin Hayes. This is a kid that spent most of his career playing in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in the American Hockey League. And then the Bruins kind of salvaged him, and then Pittsburgh gave him a chance, and they put him with Erik Karlsson, and the rest is history for him in a good way.
Oh, I totally agree with that too, Pierre. And I was going to say, by the way, not too often do you hear players voice their opinion about what coaching staff left and versus the new one coming in. There's been multiple players making those kind of comments, and the part about Wotherspoon, totally agree. He's got a grit side that's coming out even a little bit more as the games go on here, Pierre. I think that element, there's a comfortability that they have between each other. To me, it's been a great pickup, and again, under the radar pickup to your point. So, Pierre, we're looking right now, and the games are jammed in. It's almost like a survival mode. Like if you can survive, you can get away without injuries. Who's going to kind of rise to the top? Right now, Pittsburgh is in a great position. They've been playing that. They've had guys out. They're going to be coming back, and only going to make them stronger. And the guys that know it, that have come up from the minors, have an opportunity right now to kind of make a mark so that they maybe end up never leaving, or they're the first call up when it comes back around.
Absolutely. So let's just think, like Rickard Rakell's coming back at some point. Justin Brazeau's coming back at some point. Nola Chari's coming back at some point. That's really positive for the Pittsburgh Penguins. All three of those guys are NHL bodies. Look at the depth they've built up on the left side with Wotherspoon, Ryan Shea, who I think is the most improved left defenseman in the National Hockey League, Ryan Graves, who went out down and did his chores in the American Hockey League. It's interesting. Jay, you would appreciate this. I know what they were doing last night, bringing Boko Imana up to play in Philadelphia. I get the fact that they're bringing up a nuclear deterrent. You were utilized that way, and you know how hard that role is to play. I didn't see any shenanigans last night, and I think the fact that Boko was in the lineup probably led to not a lot of shenanigans last night. Rutger McGuire, he's doing his chores right now. He's finding out what it's like to be a player in the National Hockey League. That's positive long term. Ben Kindle, can't say enough good things about him. I really like the way this roster's trending. It doesn't mean they're a lead pipe cinch to make the playoffs, but man, oh man, they're a lot better than what most of the pundits said, and I really respect what the coaching staff's doing with his team.
The other part too, and one of the reasons, Larry and Pierre, you look at the goaltending right now, and if you looked at tandems across the league, and it's such a tandem world now, right? It's so different than what maybe we were used to before, like a goalie wanting the net, wanting back-to-backs. They don't do that, so they have tandems. Certainly, one of the huge differences this year has been Jari, and it's with Shilovs, and I think he's going to find his game again. I hope they don't kind of pull away, let him get the feel again, but they've been very, very good to even put you in this position.
Yeah, well, Andy Chioda, the goalie coach, deserves some credit there, Jay and Larry. The other part is, I'd have them in the top 6 tandems in the National Hockey League. The Woods, Blackwood and Wedgwood in Colorado are the two best right now in terms of a tandem. But you can look up to Ottawa, and Linus Olmark and Levi Merilainen is a really good tandem. You can look at Korpisalo and Swayman up in Boston. A lot of people really surprised by what's gone on in Boston, them being a realistic playoff team. And look at the growth of what's happened in Montreal. A lot of people thought Montembeault would be the guy, and he's not right now. It's Jakob Dobish. So there's a tandem going on there. And again, you can look around the league. I think what Jay's point is, Larry, is spot on. The truth is very seldom are you going to see Barrasso-type goalies anymore, or guys like, I'll give you a case in point, Marty Brodeur, 10 straight seasons of 60-plus starts. Those days are over. Guys aren't doing that anymore.
I was just happy to see the Penguins win last week in overtime. They've struggled. They get to overtime. I know you get a point, but you want that extra point, and they finally got a overtime win. Well, as far as coaching, and my question to you, Pierre, is I like the 3-on-3 overtime. I really enjoy it as a hockey fan. There's a pure nature to it. And coaching that, explain for the fans how that's different from when you're just playing 5-on-5 in a regular part of the game.
It's really different. One of the biggest things about 3-on-3 is puck possession, number one, and number two, winning that initial draw really matters a lot. So you got to put a lot of focus into winning that initial draw. It really matters. I've watched this transpire in college hockey too, and a lot of coaches in college, especially at the higher college levels, they have faceoff specialists now that just go out 3-on-3 just to win the initial draw. And as soon as they get puck possession, that player comes off and another skilled player comes on. But there's a lot of different tactics and tendencies in 3-on-3. So if you're playing, for instance, in a non-division game or a non-conference game, you're going for that extra point. I've seen coaches now load up with 3 forwards rather than even have a defenseman because they don't care if they lose that extra point because it's not against a rival team. But if they're playing in the division, I've seen teams go with 1 forward and 2 defensemen because they know it's going to be straight man-to-man when they play. So there are a lot of different tactics and tendencies that go on in 3-on-3 too. I like 3-on-3. I think it's great. I'd love for us to get rid of the shootout. I don't see what's wrong with having a tie game at the end of the day. If you play, and if they want to compromise on it, great. let's play 7 minutes like they do in the American Hockey League, or let's play 10 minutes if you want. But get rid of the shootout. If there's no winner by the time you're past 7 minutes or 10 minutes, then it ends in a tie. When I was a kid growing up, when Jay was a kid growing up, Larry, when you were a kid growing up, we had tie games. Nobody complained.
No, that's a good point. I'm just curious, quick sidebar. Whatever happened to the 3-on-3 league?
Well, it's still going. Yeah, you know what, Larry? It's interesting. I was part of this thing, like I said, it was a month and a half ago now over in Ireland with the IIHF, and they did a presentation. They're trying to get 3-on-3 into the Olympics. And I listened intently. I thought the presentation was outstanding. I know that Eddie Johnston's son is bringing his 3-on-3 league over to Ireland this summer to play games. So they're actually going to play their tournament over in Ireland this year. Last year, they played it in South Florida where the Florida Panthers play. So it's still going on. It's still going on, and I think it will continue to grow.
Pierre, don't you feel like, by the way, I was going to make the one, and you touched on it just briefly on the 3-on-3. It is the one time you're pure man-on-man. And you'll see breakdowns, right, where it's communication. Like, do you switch off? Do you try and, that is one of the creative, the things that are, to me, I think it's the greatest part, too. I think it's great theater, 5 minutes, and I do agree. I'd like to get rid of the shootout and go a couple more minutes, and then if it's not it, if you don't solve it, that's it. But I think probably the 3-on-3 league, maybe, look, you have the guys there for 5 minutes as we watch it, right, Pierre? It's balls out 5 minutes of, back and forth, the elite talent. If you have a game of that, it's, it might drag differently, right, Pierre? It's a little bit the 3-on-3 with Crosby against, say, McKinnon or whatever. That, as I said, great theater, and it's hard to duplicate that in a long period of time, I believe, and it's what makes it special for the NHL.
I agree. That's so spot on. Again, you can't. There are not that many Sids. There are not that many Nathan McKinnons. There are not that many Connor McDavids. There are just not that many guys. So 3-on-3's got a special, significant role in the National Hockey League. It's hard, especially if you're playing on NHL-size ice, to play 3-on-3 for more than maybe a 12-minute period. It's just not that easy to do.
You're right, Jay. It is, for a fan, it's great hockey theater. Like if I'm racing around and I want to make sure, it's going to overtime, I got to be watching that.
Isn't it funny, too, Pierre, when you see the fans, they all boo when the guy pulls it back outside of the zone, right? They just need to regroup. They're regrouping, and fans are like all over it, because you don't want to, to a degree, but it is funny the reaction that they all get. And listen, I'm with you. I think somehow there's going to be a push to eliminate the shootout and just go straight hockey and whatever happens, and we'll see, because it's certainly the better part of it. I also think, too, Pierre, you have, when we look at the Eastern Conference, still the same kind of what Toronto, the Rangers, it's amazing to me in the Eastern Conference, and teams like the Flyers up until last night, the Penguins have risen, and the ones that are on the bottom, it's going to be interesting as this pushes forward as we get into the Olympic break, if you say.
Well, what's interesting, how tight it is in the East, number one. But number two, and this is really important, the Buffalo Sabres put a beatdown on the Winnipeg Jets last night in Buffalo, 5-1. A lot of people thought, Buffalo, they're dead and buried, can't play. Well, guess what? They're coming back. They're very much alive. Florida Panthers play the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight down in South Florida. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. If it's a dreaded 3-point game, that just makes the standings that much tighter. I think you're going to be amazed at what happens near the end here. It's really important that you do not have a plethora of injuries, because if you do, Jay and Larry, you're going to have a problem with your roster. I look at the New Jersey Devils now. They've played, I think they've played 9 or 10 games without Jack Hughes due to an injury that happened at a rookie dinner in Chicago. They're below 500. And it looked to me like they were going to run away with the Metro. They're not running away with anything right now. In fact, they're going to be life and death. If they can't find some more consistent offense, they're going to be life and death to make the playoffs.
I'm curious, does the mindset, because you're going to have this Olympic break for coaching staff, you kind of have to work toward that, and it's coming up pretty quick. It's not tomorrow, but it's still close enough where it's a consideration.
No question. I've done every Olympic game since 2002. And the Olympic break, how you manage going into it and how you manage coming out of it, especially as a management group and a coaching staff, that's not on the players. That's on you as a management team and a coaching staff. So there's an old saying that Al Arbor used to say all the time in New York: prior preparation prevents potential problems. And if you don't have prior preparation to prevent potential problems, you're going to have a hard time coming out of the Olympic break. I'll tell you that right now. So the smartest teams, the guys that have the best experienced people around them, the coaching staffs that aren't afraid to ask questions of people that have been through it before, those are the guys that are going to do well. The guys that think they're bigger and smarter than everybody else and they don't care about veteran advice, they're doomed to fail.
You know, Pierre, you mentioned Jack Hughes, and I think a huge thing, the best ability is availability, right? Isn't that the way it works? And the injury bug has got him early in his career, right? And this is a different one this time around. But you look at the guys with longevity and what they've done to stay in a game that's as physical as the NHL, you got to have the ability so your team can really kind of count on that they know they have that superstar always there. It's tough when you're in and out of the lineup. It's
so tough. We dealt with this, and it wasn't because Mario was hurt. Mario was dealing with things that were far greater than injuries. You deal with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's not an injury. That's an illness that's pretty severe. But I look at John Tavares and the consistency in his game. I look at Sidney Crosby. Once you got the concussions out of his repertoire, there's really no fallback. I look at Geno Malk and look at the consistency over 20 years in his career. You can go down the line of all the great players. Ansei Kopitar is such a marvel. Think about, where he was drafted in the 2005 draft and Sydney's draft. He should have been the second overall pick. He was the 11th or the 12th overall pick. And look at the consistency in his game. It's just phenomenal. Ryan Getzlaf was very much the same. I think about all the great guys over the last 20 to 25 years. They've had one thing, Larry, that Jay just talked about. It's consistency. And that's why they've been as great and they'll be part of the pantheon of the game forever.
The one thing that we talk about here each and every night, Larry, on this radio show in the morning on KDKA, when we cover these games every night now, it's to watch, Sidney Crosby just about, I believe, 7 points away from Mario and what that means. And you and I have a great appreciation for, and by the way, Sidney Crosby is the first one that will always say, well, yeah, it's Mario did it in 900 and some odd games. I think the idea that anybody is even near him, and it took somebody like a Sidney Crosby with the years he's played and how he plays the game, I find it amazing that that's a topic that we are covering each and every night that these games are going on.
I couldn't agree more. So here's the biggest thing, and Sid would recognize this, Jay and Larry, more than anybody else. Mario did most of that point getting without the red line of being out of the game. The red line was in the game. It was tackle football on ice. It was savagery at its highest form. And so Mario had to fight through that. Sid's been a target every night, but the stretch pass, so the play that Kevin Hayes scored on last night in Philadelphia, back in when Mario was playing, that wouldn't be allowed. Could you imagine, Jay and Larry, how many points Mario would have had if the red line would have been out and guys like Larry Murphy or Paul Coffey or Paul Stanton or Ulfie Samuelson or, all those great players that Pittsburgh had over the years, if they could make the stretch pass to Mario, how many points he would have? Because he wouldn't miss on breakaways, I can tell you that.
Well, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Think about it, in the clutching and grabbing that actually Mario, I think he had a lot to do with helping eliminate some of that with the league.
Yeah. Well, we were there. Jay and I had a good seat for that game. It was a Sunday afternoon game in Washington, and Kevin Hatcher and Dale Hunter and all those guys in Washington were playing tackle football with Mario, and that's when Kevin Stevens got a little hot under the collar, and eventually Mario said, this is a garage league, and I think that got everybody's attention, and it should have gotten everybody's attention.
Do you remember, too, Pierre, in Quebec, this is when Quebec was in the league, right? So in Quebec, it might have been Finn. I'm not sure there. Whatever Mario picks up in through the early part of the neutral zone. There probably could have been 5 penalties called before he got into the offensive zone, and still, I don't even think the ref raised his arm until the very end. But it's still Mario. That is a different world, right? I swear to God, I've never seen a guy you couldn't pull him down. You couldn't do. No, it was. I think the guys were fighting for not being embarrassed more than because that's what. If you're the opposition, right, Pierre? Like I remember you saying when we were playing Boston Bruins in the playoffs. What was your one line? Always hit Ray Bourque every night. Like you can't let it easy on him. If you finish him off, you can't let him beat you up the ice. That was a theme of you that you had every time, every game, reminded every player about it. Well, if you don't take care of Mario, if you don't play hard on him or Sidney Crosby today, he's going to embarrass you. And that's what the opposition was faced with. And but to the degree that they let it go was unbelievable, and said that Mario had enough.
Well, you know what, Larry and Jay, that's funny. Jay would remember that. It was Stephen Finn, and they also had Gord Donnelly in the lineup, who would be very good at that as well. They all grew up in Montreal together. And I'll never forget, I think we went in there, Jay and Larry, I think we won 8-2 or 8-3. Mario got mad. I know that. It was a Sunday game, I think, and we won the game pretty substantially. And I remember Scotty saying to me after the game, he goes, "Bad night to get Mario mad."
It's so true, though.
You don't want to make him angry. He's good enough.
Yeah, so we sit here, Pierre, and we're lucky enough now that we're going to have you on, weekly now through this hockey season. We're so happy about that. But I think when we look at, we've talked about Crosby, we look at the status of the league. I still believe if you find yourself, I'm going to go back to the Penguins as far as special teams is concerned. They're number 1 in the league on the power play as of today. They're 4th in the league on the PK. If your numbers are usually like that, and if they can carry that forward for, that's hard to do, right? That 33% clip. But when you're in the top 5 in those two categories, you're really in a really good position as you head down the rest of this league towards the playoff run.
So smart. Larry, Scotty Bowman created a thing called a special teams quotient. It's to build off Jay's point. And there's not been a team that's won the Stanley Cup in a very long time that hasn't, in the regular season, hasn't had a special teams quotient of 105 or higher. So you get to 105 by adding the power play percentage and the penalty kill percentage. And so if you look at a team like Colorado right now, they're the best team in the league by a mile. By a mile. It's not even close right now. They're only at about 104% on their special teams. So they're a percentage point below where you need to be. But if you're 105 or higher, your chances of winning the cup are magnified substantially. It's huge. And just to give you a point on Colorado to show how good they are, because people aren't talking about it enough, going into tonight's action, Colorado's goal differential is plus 48. The next highest team in the NHL is in their division. It's Dallas. They're plus 22. They're not even close. So those are two tail sets of numbers. I know everybody focuses in on analytics, but I'm going to give you two different sets of numbers that are almost foolproof. Special teams quotient be 105 or higher, and goal differential always be plus. And if you can be in the top 5 goal differentials in the league, you have a huge chance of winning.
I think that, to me, you can even just feel it. Like you can feel when the Penguins step on the ice in that power play situation. I think going back to the Philly game last night, Pierre, and you mentioned it, I do believe there's no reason why. Look, if as a fourth line player with a mama in the lineup, and that was just one game, but he plays this. I've watched him now the last 2 seasons. Does his job. Will be there for his teammates. I know when players come back, but the one guy, the one piece that does something different than everybody else is going to be that player. And I would say there's no reason the fighting in the game is picking up again. I see no reason why you don't keep that in the lineup. If he starts to hurt you defensively, then that's a different story. That's not the case.
No, he understands what he has to do, and he doesn't fight for himself. He's a lot like you, Jay. You didn't fight for yourself. You fought for your teammates. That's why our teams are so good. We had Jay Caufield. We had Phil Bourque. We had Troy Loney. We had guys that didn't fight for themselves. They fought for the team. That's a huge part of that whole thing. Boko's the same. I watched him play in the American Hockey League for a long time, and that's a big reason why I think Kyle Dubas has him. He knew his body of work from the American Hockey League, and they brought him in. He played for Ottawa's farm team down in Belleville. He made a big mark for himself professionally just by the way he handled himself. I don't think he's a defensive liability either. Jay, you know this better than anybody. Larry and I would not understand as well as you. But here's what I would say as a coach. Every game you go into, especially in conference or division play, you need a nuclear deterrent. I'm not saying he's the highest echelon nuclear deterrent you could have, but he's a deterrent. And I think it's really important for this team in particular. It's got a lot of skill. You got to have that kind of guy.
Totally agree.
That's
totally
why
agree with that.
I enjoyed the shows we did with Lyle Odelein.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun, Pierre, for me to be a fly on the wall, to hear Jay and Odie talk about, the backstories, which were great. And he talked about scoring a hat trick with Montreal. Yeah. And he went out for a drink, and nobody wanted to talk about that. They wanted to talk about the fight he was in.
Yeah, well, I got news for you. The hat trick that he scored, that was against my Hartford Whaler team. And if Odie's going to watch this and listen, I think that's the second highest point total by a Montreal Canadiens defenseman ever. I think he had 5 points in that game. This is a good story for you guys. I was so mad at my team. I told the trainer at the end of the game, get ice for 6:30 tomorrow morning, because we were flying to Winnipeg at around 11 o'clock in the morning. So I said, we're going to practice at 6:30. And the trainer goes, you can't do that. I said, you want to bet? So we did. And I skated every drill with the players. I did everything with them. And we went on to win in Winnipeg, lose in OT in Calgary, win in Vancouver, win in Edmonton, and come home. And we also won in Quebec City. Until a couple of years ago, it was the best road trip in Whaler/Hurricane history. I'll never forget how mad the guys were, though, the next day when we practiced.
Nobody could be angry with Pierre.
So, Pierre, those days, it's kind of wild. Like, unless you've been through that kind of scenario, like, those days seem to be done, right? Those days are over. Like, you don't see it, but you talk about a deterrent, or you talk about something like the days of when, if you ever got blown out in the game, the first thing you get in the locker room, everybody's like, bag skate tomorrow, I'm sure, or something like. Bob Johnson was the one. I remember us playing a game, and Rex and I talked about this the other day too. We played in Calgary, and we got beat bad in Calgary. And that was when Bob coached there before. We all thought that was going to be one of those days the next day, and Bob was anything but that, right? He found something positive out of everything, as we know, right? But you would have thought for sure that would have been a bag skate day that we all would have experienced, but he was good enough about it and kind of understood the situation, and we moved on. But I still do think something like that still needs to be, it's not always easy, right? It's not easy, and the win isn't easy. But if it's going sideways and guys aren't doing what you want, there's nothing wrong with hard practice here and there.
No, that's right. One of the things that really helped the Penguins, though, Larry, and Jay was part of it, I felt fortunate to be a small part of it and be around, is Bob changed the atmosphere around the group. It was the first time I really believe that they had orchestrated practices that were really focused and disciplined and fast-paced and full of tempo, and it played to the strength of the team. And then we put and Jay knows this because he was part of our group, we put a high priority of internal skill development, Larry, which a lot of teams at that time weren't really doing. So whether it was me or Barry Smith or Rick Keogh, we were always working with different players on different things. And guys got a lot better, Jay. I think you would agree. Guys got better over the course of the year because of all the work we did.
Yeah, and it's true. It's certainly true, Pierre. And I think all teams, if you go around the league right now, all teams are building on that same philosophy right there, from skating to skills coach today. Totally agree with that, Pierre. Totally.
And as we say goodbye, Pierre, just so you know, Jay still puts in the work.
Oh, I know. Believe me. You know what he's getting ready for? I know March 22nd this year is the Mario Lemieux Fantasy Camp. And so I know Jay's getting ready for that. He didn't play last year. He was just like a coach.
We're now coaching.
I'll tell you how tough he is.
All I can say is this in a braggadocious manner. I'm the defending champion coach. So I got to deal with all guys like Jay and all these guys that want to take me down.
It's a tough.
This I have to observe.
We're coming after you, Pierre.
All right, Pierre. We appreciate you. Jay's so tough that he snow blows with shorts on. He's a tough guy.
Listen, I know how tough he is. The best part about Jay Caufield, maybe he is, without a doubt, of all the guys I've been around, the most loyal guy when it comes to stepping up for his teammates. Most loyal guy.
Pierre McGuire, always appreciate your time, partner.
Talk to you next week. Thanks, man.
Jay, I always enjoy talking to Pierre. He has such great stories, and what amazes me is his memory for detail.
I know.
20 years ago in the elevator, he saw that. I mean, it's remarkable.
Even Larry, to your point, he would, when he was on the broadcast, calling the games, he knows what colleges guys went to, what junior teams they played on, and I think a lot of players probably, when he brings it up, it's pretty good for them, and they all appreciate it.
Special talent. So thanks to Pierre McGuire. He'll be with us again next week, and we want to thank One Team Media. Brian Hess, Ryan Jorgen producing this episode, and from Odyssey Pittsburgh, my employer, Michael Spacciapoli.
And also the Rourke Automotive Group. Dave, we really appreciate you being a part of it. With the Rourke Advantage, you get lifetime state inspections, lifetime oil changes, engine warranty, and from beginning to end, they're outstanding. And I'm also Tom Grillish with Henderson Brothers, and Larry has a little bit more to add about that. But Henderson Brothers, thank you so much again for being a title sponsor with us.
Henderson Brothers been around since 1893, and they are a trusted partner for business, for people, your future. Experience the power of partnership with HendersonBrothers.com. Offset, our next episode Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great weekend. And, Jay, that's a wrap.